By show of hands, how many of you have ever visited to a dentist? Wow, quite a good number. How many of you hate going to a dentist? I am one of them. How many of you ever had a broken tooth? Well, I am not a dentist and I'm definitely not here to speak about the dental hygiene. But when a part of your tooth breaks, chewing becomes impossible. In fact, it's difficult to breathe. And then you attempt to bite into an apple, a whole lot of pain comes back flooding in. This is what dealing with trauma is like. On the surface, you may be dealing with quite a lot of things. May it be psychological pain, mental pain, physical pain, inflicted by us on others. It's an inescapable part of a human being. But when something triggers you, you know it's unbearable. You cannot just go off that pain. Maybe you must have been bullied in your school, or you may have betrayals in your life. Well, I am no different. So, what do? Do we hold on to the pain, or do we let go of that person who has hurt us? Well, as you might have guessed it, I'm going to speak about forgiveness and why does it matter. So, what really is forgiveness? Let me share a story about a king and a servant. A servant owes a king a huge amount of money, like say a really, really big amount, way more than the servant could have ever thought of paying him back. But the servant begs for mercy to the king. And for his surprise, the king forgives all his debt. This is what forgiveness in action is. It's like you ask your friend for $100, but they ask for $1,000,000 instead. But here's a small twist. The same servant who has been forgiven by the king for a huge amount of debt, in turn returns to another servant who just owns him a tiny bit of money, like say maybe just $1. Instead of showing the same forgiveness that he receives from the king, he starts choking the servant, asking him for that penny back. The king gets to know about it and he gets super mad at the servant, locking the ungrateful servant. Now, let me tell you what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is about setting on the reset button on the grudge. It's like saying, hey, you hurt me, but I will not hurt you back. I will let go of the pain that had caused to me. It's about giving a chance to that person, a second chance for them to correct themselves. When you give a chance to another person, you are taking back control on your own story. It's like taking care of your own self. So let me start with the four-step process of forgiveness. The first step towards forgiveness is telling your story. When you talk about what has happened to you in detail, minute by minute, you share what has exactly happened to you. Let me share a story about Clara. Clara was 19 when her sister died in a car accident. But instead of talking about her, her family members reacted as if Clara never existed. She could not express her pain and grief. And in turn, she struggled with anxiety and depression. Clara couldn't express her pain, though she was suffering herself. She thought she has to identify where it hurts. How will she understand what the problem was? She could not confide in herself. Everybody thought Clara was just stupid, but she was the only one who understood how she could go on living. Without forgiving, it's impossible to move on. It's impossible to cope up. Now let me take you to the second step towards forgiveness. Identifying where it hurts. You have to be very clear about how it made you feel. Did it make you feel angry? Did it make you feel embarrassed? Or did it make you feel hurt because someone you trusted let you down? You have to name those feelings. It's important to understand what that person has caused to you, mentally, physically. Let me share another story where people who have been experienced sexual abuse or young women who have been made to feel ashamed. They could not get a chance to express their sorrow or grief. What would they do in such a situation? Would they let just confined in themselves? Or would they share what they felt? They need a chance to name these feelings where they can get out of it easily. Naming your feelings means being open about it. You might get more vulnerable towards it. For this step, let me take you to a guided meditation where I would want all of you to perform with me. Sit comfortable, sit straight, and I want everyone to close your eyes. Imagine you are in a safe and a relaxing space. There's someone besides you. Imagine you are in a sun basking on the beach, or maybe in your bedroom in a cozy corner. What smell do you smell? How does it sound? Suddenly, you hear someone calling your name. Their voices are filled with love. Who are they? A good friend? A companion? A family member? Or someone who inspires you from afar? You sit with that person in that open space. You share your story as to what had happened with you. Every detail, minute by minute. The person hears you and they give you their full and undivided attention. As you share your story, you feel more relaxed. Then you close that box and you hand it over to your companion. They look after you for your story. You don't have to carry it anymore. Now you can open your eyes. How did it make you feel? For an instant, I'm sure you must have recalled one or the other incident that had happened in your life. Were you able to connect with what I want to say here? That is identifying where it hurts. The third step, consciously choosing to forgive. If you do not forgive someone in your life for the small mistakes they do, you would be stuck in the first two steps. Knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, we all forgive people in our daily lives for the small mistakes that they do. Why? Because we value them. We want them in our life. Kia Sasha's daughter and her husband were killed in a terrorist attack in Mumbai. She watched the surface helplessly across the world in the United States. When the picture surfaced, the picture of the terrorist on the television, she started to blurt out, "We need to forgive him." The entire family thought that she has gone crazy. But she knew that was the only way she could go on living. Otherwise, she would have consumed as much hatred as the terrorists have. She went to the families of the terrorists, met their mothers. She wanted to understand what pain are they going through. In spite she was suffering herself. She was numb. She just had tears in her eyes. She did not know what to say, what to express. All she had was the grief inside her and to accept what has happened to her family. Forgiveness isn't that easy. I know, it's very difficult. We do not forgive people easily. But that's okay. Hold on. You don't have to rush. Take your time. When you are ready for it, confide in that person. Go back to him or her. Understand what the situation was, what had really happened, which made him or her take such a big decision in life. You won't get this life again. The fourth step towards forgiveness is releasing or renewing your relationship. How are you going to renew your relationship? Only if you forgive that person or start anew with that person. Being connected to that person, even if you don't know them personally, creates some bond between you and them. It's not easy to let go of things. But Dan and Lynn Wangler, whose daughters were killed by a drunk driver, choose to forgive the lady who was responsible. They went to the prison to meet her. They sent her letters. They, in fact, chose to forgive her because they wanted to get out of that burden, that heavy burden. Imagine how beautifully they turned this tragedy into a process of forgiveness and healing. Healing would be unique to each one of you. It's important to understand. How would you take it? This process of healing would take you to another level where you would understand that this is the only life that you have. And you have to forgive people. You just cannot hold on to those grudges and lead a miserable life. So, how are you going to forgive the people who have hurt you? It's not that easy. It's difficult to understand. Sometimes you might be used to numbing your feelings, maybe by getting into wrong habits like consuming alcohol, smoking, or getting into wrong habits that are just not good for you. Or you have just learned to shut them off completely. But that's not the solution. You have to get out of it. You have to understand. Why is it happening with you? Where have you gone wrong? And now, are you going to start afresh with that person whom you have forgiven? Or you are just letting go of that hook because you don't want to stay connected to that person, but you just want to share your blessings and forgive them, which is a form of release. To summarize, let me tell you an incident where Nelson Mandela was behind the bars for the unjust 27 years into the prison. He lived with this reality and he knew that was not easy for him to get out. People said, as he walked out of the door towards the gate, if he wouldn't have left this bitterness and hatred behind, he would have still been in the prison. Was it not easy for him to get out of the prison? It was very difficult. But the moment he stepped out of the prison, he realized that's the only way he could go on living, because it was difficult for him to capture the forgiveness that he's been. People say the moment he stepped out of the jail, he realized what mistakes he had done. It was not easy for him. Like Mandela, we all struggle with forgiveness. We all are tied to our past. We all carry that burden. And we want to make that same mistake again and again. We don't want to get far off from that mistake. We choose to be in that. But remember, when you realize that you forgive someone, it's a very important thing, because you understand the depth of humanity and you break yourselves from the chains of resentment. Thank you.